Hi, Deepa Rani Shekhar from Transform Life Programs. Love and Light. Today I am going to speak about destiny and free will. I have already spoken about this in one of my previous videos also. And in my previous video about Uddhava Gita, the conversation between Krishna and Uddhava, I had also mentioned how Krishna explains to Uddhava he is only a spectator, a witness to what is happening, and does not actually interfere or manipulate things that is going on as part of a person's life experience. Let us say, in continuum with that, to give you a heads up, let me tell you two stories. Bonus, not one, two stories. The first one will be about a Greek tragedy, one of the greatest Greek tragedies called the Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. The Greek tragedy is believed to a great extent in destiny, and they did not believe in free will. To bring my point home, where the Greeks believed more in destiny and not in free will, this is the story of Oedipus, from which the Oedipus complex is picked up. The greater bonding between a mother and son, and the greater bonding between a father and son, Electra complex, psychologically, the terms is picked up from this great tragedy, Greek tragedy, Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. So, in this Greek tragedy, there is a king, Laius, and his wife, Jocasta, ruling over the kingdom of Thebes. For a long time, they don't have a child. At last, probably in answer to all their prayers, they are blessed with a son, and the whole kingdom, the king and queen, are rejoicing at having an heir to the throne of Thebes. When they are really in that exalted mood of joy and celebration and feasting, a blind soothsayer, as they were called, they could foretell what happens in the future. A blind soothsayer comes there and says, "O king, what are you rejoicing for? This child is going to bring about the destruction of this kingdom." Everybody is shocked. And you should remember, it was a period when they strongly believed in soothsayers and oracles and fortune telling and all that. So everybody is shocked, and he continued. And then when he is questioned why he said what he said, the blind soothsayer says that this child at whose birth you are rejoicing is going to kill his own father and marry his own mother. Shocking, isn't it? So were the king and queen. So, not wanting to get into this dangerous situation of where the child kills the father and marries the mother and goes into an incestuous relationship, the king asks the queen to kill the child. See, killing a child is not easy. Any child, for that matter, any human being, it's not possible if you have the human element in you. And a mother, she cannot do that. However, in view of the larger good, in the welfare of the kingdom, she asks a trusted servant of hers to dispose the baby, to kill the baby, in other terms. So this servant of Queen Jocasta also cannot kill the innocent looking baby, not looking, the innocent baby. So he takes it to the edge of the kingdom, leaves it in the forest with its ankles in claws. Iron claws were put into the ankles of the child. And then this child is picked up by the king of the neighboring kingdom, Polybus. He was again childless, so he thought it was God's gift to him. This child was the divine gift of God, and he brings up the child like his own son. and even makes him the heir to his throne. King Polybus and his wife Merope loved the child and they made him his son in all possible ways. And they name him Oedipus, that is, one with the iron claws in the ankle. That's what it translates to directly. So all is going well when he is a youth and it is a feast to celebrate his ascending the throne shortly. Somewhere something leaks out saying that he is not the biological son of King Polybus and Queen Merope. So the young prince is greatly disturbed and he goes to an oracle. Oracle is where the spirits answered, a higher power answered the questions of the Greeks. So he goes to the oracle and poses this question: am I the biological child of King Polybus and Merope? He wants to know his biological lineage. Always the oracle, we do not know whether the oracles were manipulative or whether the playwright, the author or creator of the epic or the play or whatever, wanted to uphold the point he was making. Here it is destiny. Destiny at its power. Nothing can change it. That is what the playwright Sophocles wanted to communicate, convey. So the oracle, instead of answering this question, gives him different information which he did not seek. The oracle tells him, you, Oedipus, will be killing your father and marrying your mother. And Oedipus is so shocked, so shocked. He is actually a very, very noble prince with the finest qualities. He definitely had no intentions of killing his father and marrying his mother. He is so shocked by the oracle and he does not want this oracle to come true. So to defeat this oracle, to defeat destiny, he leaves the kingdom and goes away. And as he wanders into the kingdom of his biological father, Laius, and they come at a crossroad. And there is a kind of a disagreement and a fight between Laius and Oedipus without the knowledge that they are father and son. And in the fight that ensues, young Oedipus kills his father Laius. And as he moves into the kingdom, they are being plagued by a sphinx which has a riddle, and the Theban people have not been able to solve the riddle. If they don't solve the riddle, the kingdom of Thebes will be cursed. And it has been announced that whoever can solve the riddle will have the kingdom and the queen. As chance would have it, or call it destiny, Oedipus solves the riddle. He is crowned as king and also marries Jocasta, his own mother, without knowing that she is his own mother. They start their nuptial life and they also have 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. All is going well, and at one point, again, there is an oracle saying that the kingdom is going to be doomed, because the man who slew his father and married his mother is among them. Until he is found and punished, the kingdom is going to be doomed. King Oedipus, without knowing that it is him who is the doer of whatever is being said, brings upon curse on whoever did such a heinous crime of incest. And finally, the play ends with the truth coming out, and in regret, guilt, and a feeling of having committed a great sin, Queen Jocasta hangs herself in her bedroom. And King Oedipus, now knowing the sad fact that he had married his own mother and begotten children, he blinds himself with the golden pin that held the brooch pin that held the veil of Queen Jocasta, his mother or wife. He's confused. He looks, he thinks of the children he had begotten with Jocasta and wonders whether they are his sisters and brothers or sons and daughters. Well, then the story goes further. We are not going into that part of the story. The point here is, in a period of Greek tragedies, they believed that destiny was ultimate. You could not undo destiny. That was a firm belief. While coming to Shakespearean period, there was a destiny, but free will could undo destiny. So let's take just one play of Shakespeare and I'll brief you about it, how free will acts. In a Shakespearean play, the character has a choice to choose good or bad, good or evil. And they have a chance to go with destiny or use their free will to take a different path. Macbeth is related to King Duncan, who's already old, and there is a revolution, and he and Banquo, both kinsmen and trusted generals ruling over small realms of the kingdom, go to suppress the rebellion, and they are very successful. And as they are returning victorious, they hear a prediction. They hear three witches call out to Macbeth. The witches don't call to Banquo because they somewhere know that Banquo cannot be tempted. For someone to be tempted, the seed of temptation should be within you. That is the belief that Shakespeare portrays in his play. So their target is Macbeth and not Banquo. So they just greet him as, "Hail to you, who was the Thane of Glamis," because that was his inherited ruling portion. That is the past, because his father was no more and he was a Thane of Glamis, the king of Glamis. And then the second witch greets him as the Thane of Cawdor, which he knew the Thane of Cawdor was still alive and he had sons, so in no way it could be his. And the third witch greets him as the king that shall to be hereafter. So Macbeth is picked and he questions them, but they don't answer his questions. You know, the oracles or the witches or any supernatural fortune telling, they give a different piece of information rather than answering the question that is posed to them. So they just vanish into thin air, and Banquo wants him not to believe in them. But the seed of temptation already being in him, he starts wondering whether it could come true. And when he walks into the court of King Duncan has ripped the Thane of Cawdor for having joined with the rebellious king, stripped him of his kingdom, and he bestows that kingdom on Macbeth. So one wish already come true. Macbeth now wants to make the other wish come true. So he wants to make it come true. There are many chances where he is given the option of choosing to go into the path of sin or not go, to choose the path of not righteous or stay righteous. But he chooses the path which is not righteous. He kills King Duncan. His wife, all said and done, he is unable, he goes and kills King Duncan, encouraged and motivated by his wife, Lady Macbeth, to become king. And he puts the blame on Duncan's two sons and he crowns himself as the king. And from there, he is insecure about Banquo because Banquo knows the secret. And one more prediction that the witches made was to Macbeth was, your sons will not, not in that sense per se, says that Banquo's sons will succeed you as kings. So he is not happy because he is childless and he is like, did I do all this to put Banquo's lineage on the throne? And Banquo is someone who knows a secret, so he gets Banquo killed. He wants to kill Banquo's son, but he is unable to because Banquo's son Fleance escapes. So he's always worried. And then when he goes next time, in the first case, the witches come to Macbeth seeking him. But then, to know more, Macbeth goes searching the witches. When he asks them, how is my future? Can I be safe? And things like that. Instead of telling him what he wants, they tell him, beware of Macduff. So he wants to get Macduff killed. But Macduff has already gone to meet with King Duncan's son and son Malcolm, and have a kind of a collaboration and get the kingdom back to the rightful heir, that is Malcolm, the firstborn of King Duncan. And unfortunately, Macbeth gets Macduff's innocent wife and little children killed, for which he is not forgiven. So from there, he goes into a downfall and downfall and downfall, and then he, the other prediction by the witches is, nobody born of woman can kill you. So he thinks he is unvanquishable. That has immense examples in our mythology as well. Bhasmasura, Hiranyakashipu, and so many of them. But they all still met their end. There is always a twist. There is a tweak. So same way, none born of woman can kill you. And then Macduff says, I was not born the natural way. My mother died even before I was born. So they had to rip open her belly and take me out. Probably the world's first recorded C-section. So I was born from a dead woman. So I was not born of a woman. And he kills Macbeth. So Macbeth had many options to choose. Destiny was not concrete. Destiny was not solid for Macbeth like it was for Oedipus. So now, in every case, when it is karma, friends, karma is for learning. It's not for punishment. The day we learn our lessons, karma goes into thin air. It just dissipates. So what is the learning that we have come to this school called Earth? Are we making use of free will or sticking to destiny? Let me tell you something. The more you depend on, I'm not saying it's not a science or it is not the truth. There is astrology, there is palmistry, and a lot of such sciences. But they are destiny. If you align and agree with them, the destiny takes power. If you use your free will and carve a different path for yourself, you are free from your destiny. Moreover, there might be places in your destiny sheet where God has written, as you wish. If you don't wish, you don't have a free will to change. Do you want to stick to destiny or do you want to use your free will? Now, take the crisis situations we face. Yeah, there is a lot of tension everywhere. Are we focusing on getting stuck with what is said or hope to come out of it unscathed? So you want to choose something, you can choose something. I have told you 2 stories where karma is given in a different light, where one exalts that destiny is ultimate and there is no choice. The other place, there is a choice. Free will takes shape. Free will is nothing but the choice you make. Life is nothing but choice. Whatever you're going through today in your life is because of the choices you made. If your life is not good, you have made a choice to go through the suffering for some reason. Louis Hay beautifully says, if you don't like your life, change your thoughts. Change your thoughts to change your life. Because our thoughts are creating our future. There's nothing more. Our thoughts are creating our future. God, universe, cosmic energy is nothing but a vibrational frequency we tune into. You cannot tune into Doordarshan network and ask for BBC News. Simple as that. What you tune into is what is going to be telecast or broadcast to you. So what are you tuning into? Hope or despair? Faith or doubt? Strength or weakness? What are you tuning into? So always remember, what you focus on expands. So focus on well-being, focus on staying safe, focus on being humane. Focus on being compassionate. Focus on being passionate about whatever you do. Focus on enjoying what you do. So, focus on all that gives you joy. So, stay tuned, stay focused on what brings you happiness, and see how life transforms for you. Thank you so much for joining me, Deepa Rani Shekhar from Transform Life Programs. Love and light.